I also want to say one thing about Zelenskyy. I attacked him before because I was so offended by his cavalier talk about nuclear exchange because it would kill my family. So I'm really offended by that. Anyone who talks that way, I'm offended by. But I do feel for Zelenskyy. I do. He didn't run for president to have this happen. I think Zelenskyy's been completely misused by the State Department, by Toria Nuland, by our Secretary of State, by the policymakers in the U.S. who've used Ukraine as a vessel for their ambitions, their geopolitical ambitions, but also the many American businesses who've used Ukraine as a way to fleece the American taxpayer. And then by just independent ghouls like Boris Johnson are hoping to get rich from interviews on it. Like the whole thing, Zelenskyy is at the center of this. He's not driving history. NATO and the United States is driving history. Putin is driving history. There's this guy, Zelenskyy. So, I do feel for him, and I think he's in a perilous place.
Do you think Zelensky's a hero for staying in Kiev? Because I do. To me, you can criticize a lot of things. You should call out things that are obviously positive.
I just tried to a second ago. I don't know the extent that he is in Kiev. He seems to be in the United States an awful lot, like way too much. You can do a satellite interview. You don't have to speak to my Congress. You're not an American. Please leave.
Yeah,
that's my opinion. But
you got many zingers, Tucker.
No. It's just heartfelt. It's just bubbling up from the wellspring that never turns off. But I would say this about Zelenskyy. Yeah, to the extent he's in Ukraine, good man. George W. Bush fled Washington on 9/11. I lived there with 3 kids, and he ran away to some Air Force base in South Dakota. Yeah. And I thought that was cowardly, and I said so at the time. And was I attacked for saying that. And I wrote a column about it in New York Magazine, where I then had a column, hard to believe. And but I felt that. Like I think the prerequisites of leadership are really basic. The first is caring about the people you lead. That's number one. Deep in the way a father cares for his children, or an officer cares for his troops. A president should care for his people. And that leads inexorably to the next requirement, which is bravery, physical courage. And I believe in that. And I'm not like some tough guy, but I just think it's obvious if you're in charge, I'm at my house and I feel like someone broke in. I'm not going to say to my wife, hey, baby, go deal with the home invasion. I'm going to deal with it because I'm dad. Okay. So if you're the president of a country and your capital city is attacked, as ours was at the Pentagon, and you run away, well, the Secret Service told me to. Bitch, are you in charge? Like, who's daddy here? The Secret Service? Do you know what I mean? I found that totally contemptible. And I said so. And man, did I get a lecture, not just from Republicans, but from Democrats. Oh, you don't know. Put yourself in that position. I was like, okay. I don't know what I would do under that kind of stress, enormous stress. I get it. I know one thing I wouldn't do is run away, because you can't do that. And if you're not willing to die for your country, then you shouldn't be leading it. So yes, to the extent, if Zelenskyy really is in Ukraine most of the time, amen.
Well, hold on a second. Let's clarify. It's not about whether he's in Ukraine most of the time or not.
Well, I thought that was the whole premise of the
No. At the beginning of the war, when a lot of people thought that the second biggest military in the world is pointing its guns at Kiev, is going to be taken. And a leader who stays in that city and says, fuck it. When everybody around him says flee, says everybody around him believes the city will be taken or at least destroyed, leveled, artillery, bombs, all of this. He chooses to stay. A lot of leaders. How many leaders would choose to stay?
Well, the leader of Afghanistan, the U.S.-backed leader, when the Taliban came, got in a U.S. plane with U.S. dollars and ran away. And of course, is living on those dollars now. So yeah, there's a lot of cowardly behavior. Good for him. I guess I'm looking at it slightly differently, which is what's the option? You're the leader of the country. You can't leave. Like Stalin never left Moscow during the war. It was surrounded by the Germans, as you know, for a year, and he didn't leave. And when I was in Russia, they're like, Stalin never left. It's like, yeah, he's the leader of the country. You can't. That's just table stakes, of course. I would say, but you raise an interesting, by implication, question, which is, what about Kiev? Like, you think the Russians couldn't level Kiev? Of course, obviously they could. Why haven't they? They could, but they haven't.
Well, there's military answers to that, which is urban warfare is extremely difficult.
Do you think that Putin wants to take Kiev?
No, I do think he expected Zelenskyy to flee and somebody else to come into power.
That may be totally. I don't know. don't think, I have no idea what Putin was thinking when he did that about Zelenskyy. I didn't ask him. But it's a mistake to imagine this is a contest between Putin and Zelenskyy. This is Putin versus the U.S. State Department.